Hi everyone, my name's Sophie Beadle, and today I will be presenting my final on Bumble's Fumble, the celibacy ethical issue. So, as an overall summary, Bumble is a dating app. It was founded in 2014 and it aligns similar with like apps like Hinge and Tinder. Around like 2014 was a super popular time for dating apps to launch, and ultimately they became super popular through people's kind of trial and error. I would say Bumble has like kind of risen to the top three as far as like dating apps, and they all kind of have their own twist to them, but Bumble stayed and remained like pretty popular the last 10 years. Um, it's been like popular in dating culture, I would say, to want to delete apps or to delete Tinder, delete Bumble and kind of re-download it. Um, and I think Bumble at one point even like made their slogan on the app that's meant to be deleted, or Hinge or some app along those lines. So these apps are aware that it's normal to get deleted and come back because they can be super draining as you're just kind of looking at figures and pictures online all day. So they're pretty aware of that. But I would say the issue in their statements, which I will repeat here, says Bumble launched controversial ads featuring the words about celibacy. In May of 2024, Bumble launched controversial ads featuring the words about celibacy is not the answer and thou shalt not give up on dating and become a nun. And these like kind of anti-celibacy ads were obviously super controversial because, as they know, some of their audience does delete apps and does make jokes about celibacy and whatnot. But as the brand and as kind of the ambassador for what they condone, I don't think that was the best way to go. And I'll go into some kind of ethical downfalls in a little bit, but overall they made comments like these, and obviously it was not well received as some people choose to not have sex for religious reasons, can be just personal choice, even health reasons sometimes, asexuality, things of that nature that they did not consider about their fan base, I think is what made such a large backlash towards them. And ultimately, this reaction caused Bumble to remove the ad and issue an apology, which I'll get into later. But after this, Bumble obviously took a hit financially and business wise, but this comes across a little aggressive and a little assumptive, I would say. It comes off, this ad comes off aggressive, and it just comes off like they're kind of assuming a lot about their user base when obviously they're pretty inaccurate with that assumption. Um, and so this response to this, the direct quote from their CEO was, "We made a mistake. Our ads referencing celibacy were an attempt to lead into a community frustrated by modern dating. And instead of bringing joy and humor, we unintentionally did the opposite." So as I mentioned earlier, they did this as a joke, kind of mentioning the crowd that typically mocks celibacy, or like, I'm sworn off dating, I'm sworn off men, I'm sworn off sex, whatever it is. And they unintentionally did the opposite, obviously. So they kind of took it on the chest and apologized for their actions. And I'll get into kind of what that means for them as a company later. So as far as ethical theory goes, so the two theories I decided to work on were virtue theory and dialogical perspective. So within virtue theory, it's a philosophical approach that focuses on a person's character and virtue as the primary subjects of ethics. So Bumble missed the mark here, obviously, because as I said, they made a lot of assumptions about certain users and about a large group of their users, obviously, because those are the users that ended up deleting the app or um, becoming angry or sharing their voice online about their discomfort with the ad. Um, argues that we should focus on character and virtue when approaching the idea of ethics, asks us to look at virtue and character before anything else. So obviously, in marketing, it's hard to do this with every single person you're presenting something to, but in this case, they were just ignorant in so many other user groups that have their app. Secondly, is dialogical perspective. It's a way of thinking and communicating that emphasizes understanding the complexity of others and working with difference to create meaning. It values the complexity of each human being, recognizes the human condition, understands that we're all different and view the world differently. So that specifically is kind of what caught me off guard about Bumble. So it says recognize the human condition and understands that we're all different and view the world differently. So I think within a Bumble's example, they refuse to believe that other people view the world differently, and everyone chooses celibacy for the same reasons. And I think they missed the mark with their ad, obviously, because they made the assumption that people don't um Bumble made the assumption that um Bumble made the assumption Bumble made the assumption about their viewers. Bumble made the assumption about their users that they all view the world differently and all view celibacy the same and all view um what like nuns are as kind of the same view, and they were obviously really off with that, and so they clearly didn't understand each one of their users, which I understand can be difficult, but in this ad, they made a large assumption about obviously one user group and then a bunch of the other user groups they got wrong. So the choices in this scenario, I would say, were they could either say no comment, kind of pretend it didn't happen, kind of thing, and just like wait for the storm to blow over. But what that does is creates more space for rumors to start. So people can start whispering. People can be like, "Oh, what happened to Bumble?" People can say, "Oh, they're closing down, so they don't care." Doesn't clarify the situation. Doesn't really make clear their morals or ethics or their mission statement or what they're about. It leaves the company in a gray area. Ultimately, people leaving more questions unanswered than answered, and then ultimately, it makes it hard to move forward and hard to move on. It deflects. So if they deflect it and kind of say, oh, like it's not that big of a deal, people are being sensitive and they kind of like address it, but don't address it head on, I think it lacks a lot of credibility and kind of makes people question the leadership within the company. It can appear evasive and make people kind of feel like they're using the app doesn't really matter and that the company doesn't really matter care about its users. And it ultimately can make consumers lose trust. So people that download the app or deleted it want to re-download it probably aren't going to re-download it if they feel like the leadership and the company doesn't care for them as a user. And so the third option is what they decided to do. They apologize and reaffirm company values. I already mentioned what the CEO said, but ultimately I think this helps because it um, admits to guilt. So once you admit to guilt, I think it's easier for people to be okay. They understand kind of what they did, like they have a good understanding of the situation. I think it reunites ideas of ethical leadership. So it makes people understand that there is a real person and there are real people behind the company. It's not just a machine. It proves a path forward. So once you make an apology, there's steps to be made to kind of work towards improvement afterwards. And like I said, it creates a pathway for um, future mishaps and mistakes. So when there's other things that go wrong in the company, there's a clear guideline and kind of timeline on how things should work, and it proves to people that it's not one mistake can't ruin the company, and they have a lot. They've been able to fight the thing in the past, and the CEO and the leadership within is strong enough to keep the company going and keep the morale up, regardless of what other ethical issues they may have faced in the past. So yeah, their choice obviously was to take it head on and kind of apologize and make known their mistake and apologize for it. They kind of relied on the this is our first time, this is what it wasn't intentional. Like I mentioned earlier, they said this was obviously supposed to be a joke, supposed to be humorous, and they led people in the wrong direction. And so they kind of leaned on that and the fact that it was their first time as their excuse. The Bumble CEO made a public apology, and then obviously on their social medias they linked a piece of writing to this. Um, and so in some of the responses, some people vowed to boycott Bumble. They said, I don't really need to see this anymore. Excuse me. And with so many competitive dating apps, I don't think it was really that hard of a decision to kind of let go of Bumble when there's so many other alternatives. Um, some did not take much of an issue to begin with. Like they said in their apology, they try to make a joke about it because there is a group of people of users that use Bumble that joke about celibacy and being a nun and religion. They joke about things that way. Obviously, they misread the room, but there are some users that didn't really care. Um, but apparently, it was already considered to be a slump, and profits has continued to plummet. So I don't think this scandal was like the main case for their financial downfall, but I definitely don't think it helped. And then a rebrand that was already in progress has kind of just shifted onward, and they're okay. We're going to take this. They're going to take this rebrand and kind of just kind of keep moving forward with it. So ultimately, my conclusion is, in terms of ethical values, it affirms their company values. It affirms kind of what they want to be and what they claim to be is an app that brings people together, and brings couples together and creates real love. I think in terms of virtue theory and in terms of dialogical perspective, they want to move more in that direction. They don't want to be this company that assumes things about their users and doesn't look at virtue and doesn't look at character. They're working towards understanding that their users have diverse thought and diverse opinion and diverse experiences, and they're working towards understanding that from a dialogical perspective. And in terms of virtue theory, I think um, this this scandal ultimately fails to satisfy virtue theory ethics or dialogical perspective frameworks. But in terms of virtue, I think the apology does work to help understand some of their users and some of their user base and kind of what they had a problem with. And so in their apology, I think they work towards fitting more within these respective frameworks, but obviously in the scandal they failed to do so. And to add on to more of why they didn't fit in the framework, they did not maintain diversity in thought and failed to recognize character before placing judgment. and ultimately placing that judgment into an ad. And as far as like Bumble's business and kind of how they're doing, some vowed to boycott it, some didn't take much of an issue with it to begin with. What was already considered to be a slump, obviously. Oh yeah. Yeah, so overall, Bumble obviously failed to fit within the frameworks of um, virtue theory or dialogical thinking, but I think in their apology they were closer to fitting within that framework, and I think overall the company is moving in a good direction. I think after this and after this rebrand, hopefully that'll help them kind of figure out who their user base is and work away from making assumptions and lacking diversity in thought within their marketing plans. Thanks for watching.